Hi, I had a question from one of my followers, Ricardo Jacome. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Just asking me about how I go about drawing transformers. And so I thought I'd do a quick video tutorial just on the way that I go about drawing transformers, how I like to do it currently. Obviously, the techniques I use are always evolving, but this is what I'm up to right now. Now, what I've done here is I started off in a sketch. I just blocked out the rough shapes on the pose that I want this particular transformer to have. However, I then stopped, taken a condor moment, had a break and a look at it, and I'm just thinking about how I feel about this particular. Now, it's always useful to do this at this stage rather than getting an hour or half an hour into a drawing and then deciding that something's wrong with it. And I'm just looking at it and it's not quite feeling right, and I'm trying to work out what it is about this picture that doesn't quite gel with me at the moment, and I'm deciding whether it's worth continuing to work on the picture and work into it, or just start again. And so what I've done is I'll start again. Now, I've started off this time with a stick figure just to really get those proportions nice, and I've gone over with boxes over the top to get that robotic look that all the transformers have. And now I'm using a non-repo blue pen so that my workings out, as it were, on page won't be as visible as the graphite pen that I'll later go over the top with. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just adding detail, giving it that three-dimensionality, creating perspective by having those cubes sort of elongate and recede into the background here. And I'm adding details and trying to create a feeling of movement within the picture by having him in this very dynamic pose. And whenever I draw faces like this, I'll always draw a straight line down the centre and a line across the eyes, just to make sure I get the perspective and the proportions correct. For more details on this, look at some of my other YouTube videos. We just had a quick look there at my reference material, which is a masterpiece scale G1 Prowl, one of my favourite robots here. And now what I've started to do here is I've put down the non-repo blue pen and I've picked up just a regular graphite pen that produces a dark colour that you can really identify the difference of. And I'm going over and looking at a crisper, cleaner line. I'm trying to get in more detail here and get those shapes really popping here. There was a time in the 80s where you could draw transformers slightly more two-dimensional and it was acceptable, but now things have progressed and people, they really want to see the mechanics and the workings out, and that perspective and three-dimensionality and the articulation of those transformers in the comic books nowadays. So it really is worth getting the details down. Now what I've done here is I've now put the picture on a light box. I'm tracing over. Once again, I'm using the non-repo blue, because this is the piece of paper that I'll use for the inking. And so I wanted to get this page as clean as possible. And obviously, the original sketch has got lots of working out. It's got that stick figure and the blocks and perspective lines. And I want to get away from that. So I'm just going over the top now, getting cleaner, crisper detail, trying to get those lines nice and smooth so that I'll keep my finished piece of artwork nice and crisp. And also this helps me as it gives me the opportunity to undo any errors or mistakes I may have made in the original sketch. And it also gives, I have an editing possibility here, so where I can see what I've done wrong, and what I like and what I don't like. Now what I've done here now is I've got a brush pen. I'm just going around mostly the outside, working into the image in large junctions of the shapes, but mostly it's just really outside. Now the brush pen, very similar to a traditional brush with ink or a quill pen. The only real it's not quite as smooth, unfortunately, but the only real difference is of the speed with which you can draw when using these brush pens. They're a lot quicker. The ink dries faster, and it gives you the ability to really push forward and create a sketch quickly and efficiently, which I quite like. And also, the thing that a brush pen has over, say, a fine line pen or just a regular felt tip pen is you've got a quality of the line where you can go thick to thin. Now I finished with the brush pen and I've got a fine liner. This is the 0.5, I believe, and I'm just going over some of the larger details of the inside the robot here. Now the reason I use a smaller pen inside the robot is just that it helps define that shape, so that should I be drawing other robots behind or in front of him, because it's got that bold outline, it really separates him from any background or anything else on the page. And having the fine lines inside also benefits you, and it separates this character from everything around him. And once I've finished with the 0.5, what I'll do is I'll switch over to a smaller pen. I think in this instance I used a 0.1, just to get some of the much smaller details there. And when I'm drawing, say, the rifle, which is in sort of dynamic perspective, I'll have a smaller line at the towards the pistol grip, and a bolder line towards the barrel end of the rifle, just so it appears to really leap off the page and creates that sense that it's increasing in scale. And also what I'll do is I'm now using a Sharpie just to create some bold shadows and some dark areas. This particular transformer has lots of black bodywork. This is a old-fashioned 1980 style police car, and so I'm using that to shadow and colour at the same time, and it really helps to lift that drawing off the page, I think. And now I've got a white gel pen I'll use just to tidy up my lines. Sometimes you make mistakes. It's nice just to be able to go into them. Now this is a 0.1 pen. I'm just adding in some little details, a little bit unnecessary at this stage, because I will go back digitally and use proper text tool to write in some of that detail. But I just thought I'd put it in there anyhow, because it's always nice to have a physical finished piece of artwork. Now I've gone back to the white gel pen just to add in detail there. Once again, the writing is unnecessary because I will do it with text on Photoshop, but I like having that physical finished drawing. Now I put it on my scanning bed, and as you can see, I've used a text format rather than a black and white format. Now the reason I choose this is that means there's no gradation, there's no grey elements in the picture. So once it's scanned on the computer, it's just purely a black and a white, which I quite like. Unfortunately, as you can tell, I scanned it in upside down, so I now need to rotate the image 180 degrees. What I'm doing first is I'll now convert the image from text to grayscale and then to colour, so that I can colour it on Photoshop. And see, now I need to go into the transform section of Photoshop and rotate it 180 degrees. So I've gone into transform, rotate 180. Now it's easier for me to use and look at. And both the beauty and the hindrance of Photoshop is when you zoom in close, it really shows up your line work, and it shows any unsmoothness. And I sometimes get a little bit addicted to smoothing out these, but this is what I'm doing. I'm using the capture tool just to go around the edges, and then I'll cut away excess ink just to create a smoother, more refined, neater looking transformer. Now this really helps if you're drawing something that you then want to print or display very large. As you can see now, it looks a lot neater, a lot smoother, and I'm going to go and do the whole figure in this way. And what I'll do is I've duplicated the layer so I can always look back at the original, just in case I've cut away too much material, but it looks a lot neater now. Excuse me. And now I want to duplicate the layer again so that I can have a colour version and a top layer of just black, so that as I'm colouring, I don't accidentally go over any of the black and lose some of that image. And as you can get with the paint bucket, I can just drop colours in. Now what I'm doing is I'm going, I've gone onto the internet. I've found some clip art of an Autobot logo, and I'm just going to drop it onto the picture, then use the transform tool again to scale it down to the right size to fit onto Prowl's leg. That's the particular transform this is, and then I'll just place it where it needs to go. And I see it doesn't quite fit into perspective the way it is, so you need to go back into transform and rotate it around slightly, and then I'll go back into transform one more time, and I'll put a little bit of perspective on it just so it tapers, so it appears to be leaping off the page with his leading leg, and then that's almost complete. And as you can see here, I've added a background of just a chrome effect, trying to replicate the old-fashioned 1980s Transformers logo that we used to get. Now, I hope this has answered your question